Welcome to the From Burnout to Recovery show with your host, Dr. Kate. This is where your journey to burnout recovery starts. Are you feeling overwhelmed or like work has become unmanageable? Join me and my guests for open and honest conversations about burnout recovery from the comfort of the front porch. I am here to help you build your resilience and prepare you for burnout in a whole new way through a variety of perspectives. Move past the idea that burnout can only be addressed by avoidance and work to integrate recovery into your daily life. Relax, take a breath. The From Burnout to Recovery show starts now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the From Burnout to Recovery show with Dr. Kate on Transformation Talk Radio and member of the Cordelia Stephanie Media Group. I'm Dr. Kate, and I'm your host today. And of course, I'm always excited to have you here with me. I am really thrilled to have a special guest joining me today, and that is Becky Dozeman. Becky Dozeman is a graduate of the University of Michigan with a Master's of Social Work degree. She spent nearly 2 decades gaining experience as a helping professional to support others with parenting, attachment, trauma, mood, and anxiety disorders. She took a leap into entrepreneurship and launched her coaching business this year, 2021, following God's call on her life to empower Christian women to lean into who God has created them to be. She is passionate about integrating spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, and relational health into daily life. Becky supports women through virtual retreats, webinars, short and longer term coaching programs to uncover their best yeses for a thriving life. Becky, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Kate. I am really honored to be here.
Well, I am really excited to have you. So I know you're a graduate of the University of Michigan, and I feel that it is important, or rather my parents would say it is important to share that they are also graduates from the University of Michigan. So I grew up in a blue household.
Well, you can let them know when you see them next that I am already big fans of theirs. Yes, definitely a big Michigan fan. Hopefully any non-Michigan fans out there will still be willing to listen.
Yes. And we love and appreciate you, even if you don't have that connection, or if you are a rival of the University of Michigan. Hello, Ohio State.
Yeah, we won't go there today.
No. Well, I am so excited to have you here today. And as we ask each of our guests to get us started, if you would just tell us a little bit about your burnout experience and your journey to burnout recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you use this term because I think it's one that people assume they know what it means or what it doesn't mean, or that it has to be something super dramatic and life changing. But burnout can, I think, come in many forms. So as I reflect back, I've probably had multiple seasons of burnout. And but in particular, the one that really was the biggest, I guess, kind of shaking up of my life was in that mode of 2 young kids. One was just still in the few months old in the nursing stage, and my husband went through some job transitions and life transition with where his career was going, and resulted in us moving from where we had been, established a family where my clinical practice was, and where kind of we did life. You know, we were like, this is where we're going to be forever. We had our plan, right? And moved to a small town that was very just sort of out of what I had expected. And during that season, we'd also been recovering from just sort of going from no kids to 2 kids over a 3-year period. And my sister had battled for stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. She's now, 10 years cancer free, doing really well. But we had gone through just the shaking up of life. And then 9 months after we made the big move, about an hour and a half away, my husband's mom tragically and suddenly passed away at the age of 58. And I really found myself, Dr. Kate, at a place in which all the things that I knew were maxed out. And I didn't even recognize what was happening. And it was a couple months later, my daughter was just over a year at that point. I had begun to kind of get back into my rhythms of taking care of my body. And after the death of my mother-in-law and just all the other transitional factors, I found myself really numbing. I found myself checking out. I found myself, and I mean, I love love me a glass of wine or a margarita, doing that kind of thing. But I found myself, and this is like even hard, and the shame rises up as I admit this. Kids were in bed, I would have a glass of wine during the week, and that's just not me. I was eating more gummy bears. Like that's was my thing when I was a kid. Those were coming back up into my story more. And I thought, wow, this is really not what is going to help me thrive. And I was still serving clients, but I was not thriving. And I kind of hit a point where I was exhausted all the time. I was tired. No matter how much I slept, I wasn't rested. I wasn't nurturing my body well, and went into the doctor, and she's like, girlfriend, your cortisol is never in its ideal range. And, got that sort of kind of loose diagnosis of adrenal fatigue or, kind of chronic fatigue. And so that was really for me, the kind of beginning of, I can't function at this level anymore.
Yeah. So much there in the piece. And I think that, a couple of things that I really heard and connected to, I think that a lot of people go through is like these periods of transitions, right? And how that can really kind of that upheaval in your life and in that piece. But I think, you talked a little bit about that piece of getting maxed out in that aspect, and then numbing yourself out from that. And I connected there to that. That's something, early in my career, when my first job after getting my bachelor's degree, I was absolutely using alcohol to numb out. It was a really challenging job, and I didn't know how to set boundaries between the emotions of the clients I was serving and my own. And so alcohol was kind of the way to do that. Talk to us a little bit about the recognition that you found when you realized that you were in this maxed out space.
Yeah, I think it was it's important to remember that it doesn't just happen overnight. I think often it's this little nudging. And what I really started to realize was that experiencing joy was really diminished. And I know this is something I'm sure you talk about with your guests. It was kind of like I couldn't feel the intensity of emotions, and just felt kind of flat. And when it started to really impact the joy I was experiencing parenting my children, and I was just more on edge and more, irritable. And then to be at a spot where I was yawning and tired all day throughout the day. And for me too, women can hopefully connect with this, I was in that postpartum period, and I had started to move my body and was starting to nurture better. And then this crisis happened. And like you said, already in a place of transition. So you're already a little bit depleted and you're maxed out on some of your coping. And I got to this place where my clothes weren't fitting as well. And my skin wasn't as clear. And I was just not feeling comfortable in the physical body. I actually had a moment. This was a week before I made the intentional decision to really revamp a lot of things in my life. Was I was standing, the vulnerable story. I don't think any of us love shopping for bathing suits. Like, I just think it brings up all the things, right? And
I also believe that they put the absolute worst lighting possible in any dressing room that exists. And I don't know why they do that.
And why do we buy bathing suits? We would think that would be the worst thing for them to do. Why? But we still buy them. So I was standing there with my sister, and I, had grabbed a bathing suit in the size that I imagined that I was. Again, size is just information. We're not having a talk on that today, but I stood there and I said to her, I go, I don't recognize that physical being in the mirror. I do not know who she is. I was at a weight higher than when I had been pregnant. Now, this is not, again, not a place of shaming that or anything that can happen. But I was like, this is not who I was created to be. This is not aligning with the work I feel called to do in serving clients. If I do not take care of this physical vessel, this mental and emotional being, I will not be able to show up in any way, whether it's inside my practice or inside of my own personal life. And so it just began this sort of journey inside of me where I have to figure out how to make this work. And that's when I went all in with a specific nurturing my body through nutrition and moving my body in a slow journey. Like, I am all about slow cooker. I'm not an Instapot. And so it was a good year plus to get me to what I now call my best Becky range. Yeah. And I will say, after probably a decade before of all the diets and magic things, I used to stay in the best Becky range for the last 7 years, which is never something I had achieved before. And that's sort of the piece. We talk about how did I get here? It's figuring out what nurtures me, not what works for everybody else, but what nurtures me. And I will still have my glass of wine, but do not have it every single night. And so kind of getting back to your question, I think that it's really a recognition of being in touch with what you know is a place of thriving. And when you feel like that is missing from your life, it's a time to say, I need to attune and pay attention to what is happening. If not, this path to where I could be going is not a place I want to keep walking.
Yeah. I imagine that a lot of our listeners are really connecting to that piece of like, I've lost myself, and that moment of looking in the mirror and being like, this is not my body, or this is not the space that I want to be in. I know I've had that experience when I've been in burnout and in those pieces. So I really appreciate your the vulnerability and bringing that to light for us here today, because it is hard. And I think it's a space that a lot of us don't want to admit that we got to. And that was our turning point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really appreciate you create space for that, and you'll go there yourself, because I do think that when we are in a place of some sort of an expertise in a field like this, I think people imagine that we somehow have it all together and haven't and have all the answers. And while we certainly have the education and experience and credibility, we are still humans on our own journey. And so while it's not appropriate for me to share every nook and cranny of my story, I do think that's part of the connection that we can have with our clients as we serve them, is that we're on this journey too. And it's in pretending as though we have it completely figured out, I think, is a disservice. So I promise I do this all very imperfectly.
Yeah, same. Yeah, absolutely. The other piece that I think of what you just shared was the impact was like the best Becky range in that piece. And I love that language and use similar language. And for me, I refer to like, what is the happiest, healthiest version of me? Like, how do I show up as the best version of Kate? Because in my burnout cycle and those kind of things, I became the worst version in my eyes of Kate in that aspect. So what were some of the things that you did? And you talked about this being, a slow cooker in regard to like a slower journey. And I think that that's incredibly important too. But what were some of the ways that you started for yourself?
Oh, good. Okay. Well, a few things that I did was accountability to help me implement, because I will say, and I think people will resonate with this, like we can go all in 21 days, 30 days. It's the days after that. It's getting into the cycle where it becomes a habit, and that accountability is implementation. So that was huge for me. I reconnected myself back with my emotional and mental health care, getting myself in therapy. Yes, therapists do therapy. Every coach should have a coach. I got back into that space, and I had to revamp my physical space as well. I had to reset what my routine before bed was like. I had to reset kind of what my morning routine was going to be like. I had to get out a lot of the trigger foods, and I had to get people on board with where I was going, because loving people who mean well, that's also not loving people who don't mean well in your life potentially, but loving people will sabotage you even without that intent. So I really had to let my community know, hey, this is what I'm doing, not to be skinny, not to be at a certain range, not for my jeans to have a certain number, but I want to get into a space where I am taking care of all areas of my wellness. And I need you guys on board with that. So I think that's an important part, is I kind of looked at what do I need to thrive and what are barriers to that, and what I call kind of prevention. I like calling it front loading. Prevention sounds boring. I front load, like what can I pack into my journey to have it thrive as much as possible. So I'm not just having to do the coping reactive stuff. I'm really trying to kind of preempt it before it might happen. So that was just sort of like an overarching. And then I got real practical things too. I got something that worked, a way to track it, a way to do the journey. And, someone would have said 7 years ago that you're going to be able to maintain this best Becky range of nurturing and that place of weight, I wouldn't have believed them. And I think that's just it, is that you talk about the healthiest, happiest. I talk about her best yeses, is that Dr. Kate, your best yes and mine are not going to be the same. And there's been ebb and flow. I'm sure you and I could analyze through our lives where there are different seasons, and what you need. You might have a season where, yeah, you got to get yourself to sleep, get your veggies and water in, and like move that body. You might have other seasons where you need your sleep. You need to just take a couple of walks, and you need to not obsess process over meal planning. And so I think that's the piece is there's not even 1 or 10 ways to do it. There is countless ways, and uniquely finding what works best for you and for your season and what you need to thrive. Really is yeah, like I said, is that personal experience. And then it can take a lifetime to figure that out. And I think you've probably had this too. People that want instant results might get them, but for me, I want sustainable, maintainable results. And I think that's kind of where our culture really sends messages that end up tripping us up where we actually want to go.
Yeah. Oh boy, I definitely agree with that. And that piece of the messaging is really around what's the quick fix and how can I get to that result, the fastest. I know, I'm sure you see clients in the same aspect. They're like, I want this to be fixed yesterday.
Mhm.
And then to work through that process of this is going to take a little time to work through this one, because it took you some time to get into this space first. So we got to take some time to, rewire those habits and those kinds of things. I really appreciate the piece that you brought forward in communicating to the people around you who support you in this, but can also, like, I think, unknowingly sabotage. What are some of the ways and maybe some guidance that you can give our audience members of how to have those conversations?
Sure. Well, I guess first, there'd be people, I kind of call them your heart people, the ones that have earned the right to hear your story that you do intimate life with. Start with them,
Yeah.
and just sort of letting them know what your why for behind it. And not like your why, I want to be healthy. No, like your actual why. Like get really, really intentional about it. And so when I sat down with my husband in particular, I just said, this is not about me being a certain size or getting back to what my body looked like before kids. This is the body that I have now. I'm grateful for her, but I know that in order for me to be the wife and the mother and the friend and therapist and all of that I'm called to be, I need to change the way I'm taking care of my body. And this is the way. I even actually told him some scripts of things to say to me, which people are like, that seems strange, but I know what my love language is and how to communicate. Here's the things I need you to say for me.
Yeah.
When I'm saying, hey, I want to have that treat or snack or grab a bottle of wine for Friday night or something, to lovingly say, hey, I hear you, but I'm committed to your why in this with you. And I can't wait to have a glass of wine at some point when that will help you, to celebrate and we can thrive in that way. And so those kinds of things. And then girlfriends to say, hey, this is what I'm doing when we're having girls' night. If I've saved my treat or something for then, awesome. But if I'm going to have that salad with that lean protein and I'm not going to have a glass of wine, I need you just to give me a hug and say, I'm proud of you, and not say, hey girl, why aren't you drinking with us? And those kind of things, like,
Mhm.
why aren't you having so-and-so? And literally that's a lot about their journey too. So saying to them, I'm having my salad, or I'm going to have my lean protein and my salmon and my veggies over here. And it is not, go have your cheeseburger if that's what you're going to have, like, not judging you. This is just what I need to do. And so I think just having those conversations with people. And the biggest thing though, for me, was if the food is there and the stress is there, the food that's there is going to go into my body. So
Mhm.
that was part of it too. Telling my husband, hey, this stuff isn't going to be in our house while Becky's on this journey. So
Yeah.
it was helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is incredibly helpful. And I like the piece of, reminding and helping our audience members understand that when we set boundaries in those pieces, it's about you. And it's important to highlight the piece that you're not making a judgment on the other person. You're simply acknowledging your expectations and your needs. And in a loving way, educating them on them so that they don't misstep in the future, which I think is so incredibly important.
Yeah. And when they do mess up, because they're imperfect
They
too,
will, yes.
give them grace and remind them, and don't bite their head off about that, because there can be a tendency really when we're getting spicy like that. And another one, I was just talking sort of about food and stuff, but another big one for me was when I was really in a season of wanting to start my day early with getting into my routine. It meant I had to go to bed early. So it resulted in kind of revamping the kids' schedule, and that hanging out and watching a show before bed just wasn't happening. I was going to bed at 9 or 9:30, which I had never done, but that was part of that. And so having those conversations, and really boundaries, like, you're mentioning the importance of boundaries. Really, boundaries are a way in which we're letting ourselves know that we believe there's worth and value. And it's not about telling other people the way they need to do life, but saying, this is what works for me. And so often those boundaries are finding, hey, this is a good yes. or this is a good no. And every time we make a commitment to a yes, we're saying no to something else, and that's okay. And just like as last thing, I'm really big on permission slips. Give yourself permission that some of your best yeses and best nos are going to rub people in your life the wrong way, and they're not going to love it. As you shift and grow and change, you're going to show up differently, and that might not be totally comfortable, but it's not for them, but that's not your job to make everything comfortable for your people.
Oh, yes. Oh, gosh, that is so important, I think, in that piece for anyone who is on a journey and exploring this and getting back to that best version of themselves, that best range for themselves, and that the importance of that journey and what that looks like, and that you're changing as part of that. And so it's the space that's around you, the people around you are going to have reactions to that, and not taking ownership of those is so important.
Yeah, and a lot of us gals aren't always excelling in that
We're not
area.
so good at that.
We're not
No,
so good at
no,
that.
not so good at that. keep, I'm, I try, keep trying. It's a growth process too. So
Yeah, I always say it's the growing edge, and I hope that every day we can take little steps towards it. And I feel like as you're saying all this, one of the things I think sometimes the story people say is like it needs to always be more. I will say part of my sort of process of recovery from burnout or from taking on too much muchness in my life is really a place of surrender. I think sometimes just a permission slip where I don't have to do all the things and I can just step back and pause. And so when you're asking what are some tips, another one that I didn't mention that I think has been life changing is I was going from one appointment to another and one thing to another. I was maxing my schedule out, and I have now been creating, not perfect at it, creating white space and margins to just give myself grace and a deep breath and go to the bathroom. Like
yes.
we need to have and scheduling time in to eat. So I think that, when people are like recovering from burnout or preventing another one or being like, I've never had one, but I don't want one. I don't want that season, is really saying, how do we create an environment that we're going to be able to thrive? And many of us are just maxing our schedules out, even if it's full of really, really good stuff. If it's just full of more stuff, and you are noticing some of I'm sure you talk about symptoms all the time on signs of burnout. If you're noticing some of those, your body is sending you messages that it's bubbling up, and it's something you need to attend and attune to, or you're going to get into what we started our conversation about: suppression, avoidance, and numbing. And when the rising up happens, it's an invitation to attune and tend to what you need to nurture, or continue the pattern of suppression, avoiding, and numbing. And if you continue that pattern, it's likely going to go in the direction of burnout or other probably not ideal best yeses for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So, audience members, so one of your challenges today is take a look at your calendar and have you maxed yourself out. And then maybe you can't make the adjustments this week, but look at next week and where can you create white space? And I don't think either of us is saying that you need to create like hours and hours of white space, but where can you carve out that 15-minute break, that half an hour to give yourself time and space away from your work so you can enjoy your lunch in a little more of a mindful way? So that's your challenge this week. Create some white space if you've got a maxed out calendar, and that will help support you on your journey. Becky, this has been so great. So many awesome insights. And of course, listeners, if you haven't yet, make sure that you subscribe, follow, and I want you to share this with someone you know who needs to hear this message so we can make sure that more people understand that burnout happens, but there is a space and a way out of it. And it doesn't have to be a space that you're stuck in. Becky, what is one additional piece of advice that you would offer our audience members?
I think probably would be an opportunity invitation to redefine the way in which you look at failure. I think when we make attempts at some of the things we've talked about, like I've tried changes, Becky and Dr. Kate, and I've just failed at it. And I think the invitation, it's really been a freedom invitation for myself to give me more freedom, is to break up with the idea of failure and really just giving yourself the gift of either I am thriving, I am slaying life, I am in the flow, like and celebrate those, and those moments where you're like, yeah, did not that one did not hit the mark. That one, yeah, it did not go the way that I was intended. Instead of saying, I am a failure or I failed at this, saying, well, there I go, learning another way not to do something well. Just a tiny little
Mhm.
reconceptualization of the way we talk to ourselves about our mistakes. 'Cause often it's so many of those mistakes and the shame that comes with that piece that can lead to an internal dialogue that sets us up to be more susceptible to burnout. And so, yeah, girls, well, you probably talk to guys too, but girls talking to you especially, like if you are telling yourself the message that you are failing, you failed at something, what about reconceptualizing that thought to I've just learned another way not to do something. I will thrive again, but right now I'm going to work on speaking to myself with a little bit more self-compassion and
Mhm.
grace, so I can continue this journey of learning and hopefully getting back in the flow for some seasons, but giving myself permission when I don't hit the mark.
Yeah, I love that reframe and vision when it comes to failure in that aspect. That nope, I've just learned a different way of doing this that didn't work this time, and what can I learn from this process? Thank you so much for sharing that and all of the great tips that you offered today. Where can our audience members find out more about you?
Sure. Yeah, my website is herbestyes.com. I'm also at herbestyes on Instagram. I'm Becky Dozeman at Facebook. I'd love a message. Check me out there. Her Best Yes with Becky is my podcast. Share lots of tips and tricks. And similarly to Dr. Kate, bring on guests to talk about seasons of surviving and thriving. And really, I just love to connect with women because I truly believe that when we can work on integrating all areas of our wellness, we are going to be able to show up and really bring to the world what we have, our unique gifts and offerings. So that's really what I love to do.
Awesome. Well, I have loved having you here with us today. All of the links and everything that you mentioned will be in the show notes, so you can find that easily. Dear audience members, Becky, once again, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, dear listeners, we are going to move into our recovery moment. And of course, I want to make sure that you are in a safe space to do that, in a practicing space. And if that's not you right now, go ahead and listen, but come back to us later for that space. Remember to subscribe to the show. You can also download the KS Media Group app for all the world's best influencers in one place, and know that I offer recovery moments on the app that you can access and listen to any time that you would like. You can also find this podcast and others there. Today, our recovery moment is focused on stress, and we're going to visualize our stress as a storm. So let's get started. This recovery moment is to help you through high amounts of stress. When we are presented with situations in our life that are very high stress, it seems impossible to get past the stressful feelings to see clearly. The best way to tackle high stress situations is through full and conscious breathing. When we are not present in our bodies, our thoughts can carry us away, making stressful situations almost debilitating. Luckily, we have awareness to focus on our breath and body. We can bring ourselves back to the present moment, bringing us clarity. So let's honor our breath now and how it brings us into the present moment by taking 5 significant and purposeful breaths. 1, fully inhale, expanding your belly and chest as much as you can, holding it for a moment, and exhale, feeling a wave of relaxation sweep over you. 2, inhale, feeling your entire breathing system with fresh oxygen. Hold it and exhale, the wave of relaxation gently sweeping over you. 3, inhale, so that you are brimming with air, holding it, soaking in oxygen, and exhale. Your body relaxes in different areas without any effort. 4, fully inhale, feeling these breaths purifying your entire body. Exhaling, just noticing how you are feeling. And 5, a beautiful breath coming in. Hold it, feeling invigorated from oxygen. And exhale, allowing relaxation to sweep over you. Take note of how you feel at this very moment. You now have an abundance of oxygen. This is how we are created to feel. Breathing deeply and fully is an expression of self-compassion. Let your breath become natural and notice how abundance feels. Good. Now, visualize yourself standing in a big field and no one else is around. Everything is calm and peaceful. You are surrounded by nature. Sit down in this meadow and look around, noticing the beauty all around you. You are fully relaxed. In the distance, you see dark clouds closing in as the sky grows a little darker. You see that a small storm is forming, and you feel some raindrops falling down. Imagine that this storm is your stress. It could be a mild stress with just some rain and a little wind, or it could be a very high stress with extremely strong winds and a very heavy rain pouring down. In this visual, we are going to face a very strong and powerful storm to make ourselves stronger within. So as you feel the storm getting even stronger and the wind is blowing harder and harder, you sit there in the meadow completely unfazed by it. The storm cannot hurt you here. You have a choice to react to the storm with fear or with love and compassion, knowing that the storm is harmless in this visualization you are creating. Stress is our reaction to fear, worry, and even high demands. Whether the fear is real or not, we have to learn the proper reaction to all these things. Sometimes you can't help it, and stress will take over in a matter of seconds, and we must handle it properly, or it will handle us. Just like sitting through the storm in the field, stress cannot harm you if you know that it is simply passing you by. What matters is your own reaction to the events around you. Really embrace the stress now and let it fully exist without fighting it. You see this storm of stress in front of you is very dark as the storm clouds get thicker, raining down with fury. You decide to get up from where you are sitting and slowly walking towards it without fear nor worry, just pure confidence that you are safe and in control. You get closer and closer as the storm nears and the wind blows with tremendous speed. The winds and rains have no effect on you. It is really easy for you to step forward and only your clothes are flopping around. As you look forward, you see the eye of this storm. And around that eye, the winds and the rain are extremely powerful and strong. Yet you have zero worry as you step inside this eye. You are standing now inside the center, and everything is calm and peaceful here. You look around from within the eye of the storm and can see all the chaos around you. But inside, here, it's calm and cozy. This is your space, your safe spot. And so when the stress has fully taken you over, you have no choice to let it blow over without a fight, just sitting right in the middle of it, realizing that it cannot hurt you here. Witness your body is the center, and any stress is a storm surrounding you that comes and goes. You are in control and can always come back to your safe space. And now, you, the storm, you notice the storm is losing its power, dying down now slowly. The rain is easing up, and it's only drizzling. You see the clouds drifting away as the sky gets brighter. The sunlight peeks through the clouds as they pass by, then eventually bursts out with great intensity, shining a beautiful light all around you. You see birds coming out and start singing. You see butterflies and bees buzzing around, the flowers that are blossoming now after the heavy rains. Everything is beautiful now. This moment represents you in a beautiful state of mind where stress has no control of you as it passed you by. We are now going to take 3 nice deep breaths in, slowly bringing ourselves back to the present moment. 1 nice full breath, all fresh energy. 2, breathing, taking in all you've learned here today. And 3, take another helpful breath, allowing the memory of your strength through the storm to be present with you in your mind right now. You can use this technique or this recovery moment whenever you find yourself in a high stress situation, and you will be amazed at how you can ride out the storm of stress. Remember, for more recovery moments, you can follow me at Dr. Kate Steiner on Instagram and subscribe to the From Burnout to Recovery Show YouTube channel. I am so grateful for our guest, Becky Dozeman. Remember that you can find her at her website, herbestyes.com. And I'm grateful to each of you for listening. Thank you for joining us today on the From Burnout to Recovery Show with Dr. Kate on Transformation Talk Radio. I'm Dr. Kate, and I wish you peace on your journey. Thank you for joining me on the front porch today. Remember, you can download your free Burnout to Recovery Reflection Journal on my website, drkatesteiner.com. And be well, my friends. Thank you for joining me, Dr. Kate, on the From Burnout to Recovery Show, where you are starting your journey to burnout recovery. You are invited to join me on the front porch every second and fourth Friday of the month on transformationtalkradio.com to continue growing in resilience and integrating recovery into your daily life. If you would like to learn more or find out how to work with me, visit liftwellnessconsulting.com.